Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein. This is Torah study for a Shabbos morning, joined this morning by my dear friend, Rabbi Marc Gellman from Florida. Marc, good morning, good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. How was your Hanukkah?
Hope you're staying warm there in Florida. Hanukkah was lovely, thank you. A lot of friends, a lot of Hanukkah, a lot of warmth and light. It was terrific. And now here it is, New Year's Eve. This wonderful year of 2022 is finally leaving us. Take a big deep breath and let's hope for a better new year.
Away 2022.
So this morning we are going to reach the denouement, the great climax of the story of Joseph, the climax, I think, of the whole book of Genesis. Yeah. The whole book of Genesis is about the rivalry among brothers. And today we have this moment of truth when the prime minister of Egypt, the vizier, who we know is Joseph, but the brothers don't know it. He takes Benjamin captive and says to the brothers, go back to your father, I'll keep this one. He puts them in exactly the same position they were in 21 years ago when he was the one languishing in the pit and the brothers wanted to get rid of him. And he wants to see how they'll respond. And this time it's completely different. Judah, the leader of the brothers, who ironically is the one who suggested selling Joseph into slavery. Judah steps forward. Vayigash Yehuda, he steps up. Morally, he steps up. Personally, he steps up. And he says, take me instead. And at that point, Joseph loses it. He banishes the servants, takes off the mask in every sense, and he says, Ani Yosef achicha od avichai. I am Joseph, your brother. Is our father still alive? And the family is reunited, and all lives happily ever after. They bring Jacob down to Egypt. He is honored as a guest in the house of Pharaoh. The family lives happily ever after in Goshen. Well, until 2 weeks from now when we know what's going to happen. But for a moment, there's a sort of it's a wonderful life ending to this story. Clarence gets his wings. Joseph and his brothers are one happy family. And then the Bible throws in one more little vignette, one little wrinkle, just in case you thought, family can actually be simple. Jacob, the old man, dies. They go back to Canaan and bury him in a cave with his wives. And on the way home, there's a story. And here's the story. I'll put it up on the screen so we can actually read it. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong that we did him? Now, mind you, this is 10 years later. They've been living together for 10 years. And 10 years, he's been taking care of the family. For 10 years, they've been sitting down to dinner together. They've been making Thanksgiving and Hanukkah together. For 10 years, we have had this family reconciliation. And now that the old man is gone, they still say, what if he's holding a grudge? Which means that none of it gets buried. Jewish families have a way of preserving these grudges, these things you did to me and things I did to you. So they sent a message to Joseph. Before his death, your father left this instruction. So shall you say to Joseph, forgive, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Therefore, please forgive the offense of the servants of God. What an interesting phrase. Please forgive the offense of the servants of God of your father's house, right? And Joseph was in tears. And now Joseph's tears are interesting because every time he cries, it reveals another layer of himself. So one of the questions we have to ask, Marc, is what are these tears about? When the brothers sent him this message, why is he crying? And the brothers went to him and they flung themselves before him. And he said, we're prepared to be your slaves. So, they're harboring all of the guilt from what they did, and they're projecting it on him. And he says, have no fear. Am I a substitute for God? And then here's the line. Besides, although you intended me harm, God intended it for good. so as to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. And fear not, I will sustain you in your dependence. Thus he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph and his father's house will remain in Egypt. Joseph lived 110 years. So first of all, you got to help me, my dear Rabbi. The brothers come to him 10 years later, and they're still worried. They're still harboring something. Do families ever bury the hatchet? Do families ever forget the grudges, the hurts, the slights, the offenses? Do families ever really forgive and really make peace? Or is this an image of, well, yeah, you can make peace sort of on one level, but on another level, there's always something left. There's always a sharp edge left. And
Well,
then
this isn't just families. When I taught children, Eddie, at the synagogue once, and I always before Yom Kippur, I would have a Ask the Rabbi session with all the kids, and I would talk to them about saying you're sorry and ask them when was the last time you said you were sorry, and did you really mean it when you said it, and was it because your mother or father forced you to say you were sorry for hitting your sister? And I went through the whole thing. And then I took out a board, and I had some nails, and I had them help me. I said, pound the nails into the board, and they would pound the nails into the board a little bit. And then I said, okay, take the nails out of the board. I said, the nails are the bad things you do to people, people you love. That's the nail, okay? And when you say you're sorry, that's like pulling out the nail from the board. I said, so what's left though after you pull out the nail? What's left is the hole. And I said, you see, when you hurt somebody, even when you say you're sorry and pull out the nail, there's still a hole. And that's why you have to be so careful not to hurt people, especially the people you love, and not to say bad things about them as soon as you can, not to say hurtful things to them. And that's because in some way there's no possibility for filling the hole. It's good that you take the nail out of the hole. That's as good as you can do. But it depends on the love of the person you hurt, whether you can heal the hole itself. And I think I once wrote an essay for the American Psychiatric Association called Repentance as Therapy in Jewish Pastoral Counseling. And my thesis in that academic piece was that before Freud, there had to be a way for people to reconcile themselves, right? I mean, psychological problems didn't start with Freud. So I said, the way we did it in Judaism was tshuva. And we understood the nail in the hole and the whole thing, and asking 3 times and all that. But what we also understood was that the hole remains. And for that, we said, you can't be healed from this until God purifies your soul. There's an element of tshuva that only God can provide on Yom Kippur, and that is to cleanse your soul of the effects of sin. You do everything you can by apologizing, but to purify your heart and truly allow yourself to go forward, you need to feel that God is somehow cleansing you. And I think Christianity got this right, and we got it right, but I don't think we've talked about it as much as they do, about the cleansing nature of God's grace and God's forgiveness. And I think that's the piece of it. So to answer your question directly, yes, we can go some distance in repentance, but no, you can't go beyond a certain point. Beyond that point, you need God's chesed.
And then the next level of this is Joseph's response. First of all, he cries. He cries. Now, the tears, whenever Joseph cries, it's an interesting moment, right? Because he doesn't cry in the pit. He didn't cry when they sold him into slavery. He didn't cry when Potiphar's wife betrayed him and he got sent into prison. You know, he didn't cry when he got schlepped up. He cries when he meets his brothers. And he cries at this point because I said that the tears have to do with reconnection.
Yes.
The tears have to do with connection with who you really are, with his real self, not the mask he wears to Egypt, but the real self of the kid who grew up in Jacob's household, and the kid who, you know, was loved by his mother who left him when he was very young. That's the tears he cries. And when the brothers come to him, he cries again. And you wonder, is that a chance to finally prove to them that their repentance is accepted? Or was that a sort of frustrated cry over, you know, I'll never be one with these guys. We'll never be whole. The whole will never go away. And he says to them, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And then he says to them, look, and he offers what is basically the biblical idea of history. This is, in one sentence, the biblical philosophy of history, which is, you intended this for bad, God made it come out well. So this is a philosophy that says we live in the world and we make our choices, and we make our choices based on our own perceptions of the world, our own visions of where we'd like to go. But there is another force in the world shaping history, that history is sort of shaped from above, and that in the end, it's going to come out the way God wanted it, no matter what we end up doing. And that's his theory. And he says, listen, this wasn't you. Don't blame yourselves, he says. This wasn't you. This was God's way of saving the lives of the whole world. And that idea that somehow history is shaped by an outside force, a higher force, an upstairs history as opposed to the downstairs history, and that somehow your moral culpability is reduced because even though you meant it for evil, it was part of a bigger plan that had to come out that way.
Yeah, that's wonderfully said, and I agree. I think that's what it is about. And to say it, I'd say directly to our students who are watching, it's a question of whether you believe in fate. How much do you believe in fate? And that's the lesson from this Parsha, which jumps off the pages and jumps right into your life and our lives. And so, Rabbi Feinstein and I, we ask you, to what degree do you believe your life is directed by God? And to what degree do you believe that you direct your life completely outside of any interventions by God? And this comes back to what I believe about faith, which is people normally have I think, an incorrect view of faith. They think that faith is the ability to believe certain things. I don't. I think faith is the ability to hold a paradox in your heart, the ability to believe in two contradictory things and hold them in equipoise in your heart. For example, Abraham was a man of faith, not because he believed in God, but who gave him Isaac, but also because he believed in a God who told him to kill Isaac. And he was able to balance those two things. Joseph proves that he's a man of faith, even though, unlike his great-grandfather Abraham, he never once speaks to God or hears from God. Joseph finally reveals himself with this wonderful passage, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai, I'm Joseph, your brother. And he understands that he has this paradox. These are the people who sold me into slavery, into certain death. And yet, on the other hand, they're my brothers, and I love them. And he's able to embrace the paradox. And what's extraordinary about Ani Yosef ha'od avichai is that verse was given spectacular new meaning when Pope John the 23rd met with the rabbis of Rome and said, for the first time, a pope meets with the rabbis of Rome, said, I am Joseph. He's Joseph Roncalli, right? So he said, I'm Joseph, your brother.
Right.
And this is the head of a church that had led pogroms against Jews, and that had been responsible for blood libels and for horrid anti-Semitism, and yet he had turned it all around with Nostra Aetate and with this Vatican encyclical condemning anti-Semitism and condemning any teaching of that Jews are under a curse because they killed Jesus. So he brings this biblical verse back into the modern world, and with the same effect, because to believe this Pope in that sentence, you have to believe in a paradox. Here's a church that thinks that we're basically going to hell if we don't accept Jesus. And on the other hand, here's a man who's saying, I'm your brother. I am part of your family. I embrace your covenant. I honor your covenant. So, and I used to feel that every day that I was with Father Tom. I said, what a thing this is, that here's a rabbi and a priest who for the first time ever were on TV and together and loved each other. And for us, it was easy because we loved each other. But it also was a paradox because he represented a church that has a very, very embarrassing history in the way it has treated my people. So I think, and one final thing, Tommy and I were responsible with a friend of ours in sending high-tech digital mammography units to Eastern Europe. And in return for which certain Torah scrolls and other Judaica were sent to us in return. And we were over in Krakow, Poland one time dedicating a new mammography clinic. And a man comes out, a Polish farmer with his wife, crying, she's crying. And the translator says, there was a plaque on the wall, this mammography unit donated by our friend, the businessman, and Rabbi Marc Gellman and Father Tom Hartman. And he said, you're the rabbi? Yes. He said, let me ask you, my wife has stage 1 breast cancer, and the doctor said only this machine could have diagnosed her, and you saved her life. And I'm asking you, why would you do this for us after what we did to you and your people during the war? And Eddie, I was speechless, which is rare for me. And finally, I gathered myself and I said, well, I think it does come down to this. We can either hate each other forever and teach our children to hate each other forever, or someday we can teach our children that hatred must end. And we must move together as brothers and sisters in faith under God. And to me, I said to him, today seems to me like a good day to begin that. And we hugged, and it didn't wipe out the culpability of anyone in the Holocaust. And it didn't change the embarrassing and brutal and horrible and immoral history and shame that stained so many people and nations. But what it did do is it pulled a nail out of a board.
Right.
For one man and his wife.
Right.
And I think that's the meaning of the Joseph story. That at some point, when you realize that God has given you the ability to forgive, the only response to that is tears. Because to forgive is the greatest gift that we can give people.
Yeah,
the greatest gift. It's an act of love. And an act of love to people who haven't hurt us, who, we love and are in our family and haven't done anything. That's easy. But we're talking here about forgiveness of people who have hurt you, perhaps deeply.
Yeah.
And Tommy and I used to have difficult discussions about this, because I took the Jewish position. Well, if someone asks forgiveness, you are compelled to grant them mechila, grant them forgiveness. And he said, no, that misunderstands what forgiveness is. Forgiveness to even unrepentant people is the greatest gift that you can show, because otherwise you're saying forgiveness is earned, and forgiveness is never earned. And and I think he convinced me at that moment. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think the Joseph story is about, and why he cried.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful story.
Thanks.
It's a very beautiful story. So let's just pursue this one more level, okay? The story you told is quite remarkable. It reminds me, by the way, that once Shlomo Carlebach was asked whether he hated the Europeans who destroyed Jews during the Holocaust, and he said, if I had two hearts, I could fill one with hate and one with love. But as long as I only have one, I'm going to fill it with love. And that was his way of putting the same basic idea. But let's take a look at the idea one more time, okay? A little more philosophically, perhaps, right? If I say I have my experience of free will, I have to make decisions, and my destiny is based on the decisions and choices that I make in my life. But I have perfect faith that somehow there's a God who's going to make it all come out right. Is that a true faith? First of all, does that relieve me of moral culpability? Can I turn around later and say, yeah, I know I hurt you, I'm sorry, but that was really what God wanted it to happen, or God wanted this to come out this way. So does it relieve me of moral culpability, of moral responsibility? That's one level of it. And the other level is, yeah, I know that there is this feeling, and many of us have this feeling, that things happen and the word we use in Hebrew is beshert, in Yiddish. Beshert, it was written, it was intended, it was what was supposed to happen. And you can look back, especially at happier things, and say, it's beshert that we met and we began a life together. But tragedies, we don't say, or, beshert, it's harder to say about those kinds of things.
Yeah, so here's my view on that. That's why I said to you what I said, which is faith is the embracing of a paradox. Faith is not embracing a set of beliefs. And this is maybe the greatest of all the paradoxes. You must believe two contradictory things to have faith as a Jew, as a religious person of any kind. In our case, you have to have faith that your choices are determinative. What you choose is how your life is going to work out. On the other hand, you have to believe that God is opening to you certain opportunities for your life, certain pathways that appear to you in your life, and that those pathways will lead to greater flourishing and success. And you have to be open to seeing the pathways that are presented, which are usually people in your life. I believe in angels that way, that come to you and they say, I think you'd make a great artist or a writer or a mother or a doctor or whatever. And then, this person who you just met, they really like you. And maybe those are the angels and those are the messages. And so you have to embrace the idea that they come to you like the man in the field came to Joseph, who was looking for his brothers in Shechem, and they ended up in Dothan. And why? What's the point of that? Why not just say, and he went to Dothan and found his brothers? Because it's about being open to the angels among us, to serendipity, to God's fate, to God's intervention in our life, which is not so direct that it's the clouds split and the lightning and the finger comes and goes, go that way, stupid, do that. It's not that way. It's much more subtle, and it requires an openness to the encounter with the divine in our life. You have to have an openness to it. And then when it happens, you see it. I see it. I mean, Tommy and I met on the Passover and Easter. We're on the same day. And after the 2 minutes on air, I'm supposed to go home and tell this place in Florida I'm going to come and be their rabbi. And Tommy says, no, you're not doing that, because I had a dream and God said he's not through with you here. And I believed that, just on that basis that this guy said this to me, a total stranger. I believed it. And I said, okay. I took my phone. I said, I'm not coming to Florida, which was, of course, not true. I'm here now, but I'm not taking your job. And thank you. They said, what? You're nuts. And I said, I know, but I met an angel. And he said, God's not through with me. And years later, they came up after the lecture Tom and I were giving at the Kravitz Center down here. And they said, you know what? You were right. There was something that you were supposed to do with Tom Hartman that you wouldn't have done if you had come down here to Florida. So, and I was willing to throw away my life, a no-brainer, position in the rabbinate, no-brainer. And I was willing to do it because I felt the call that this was, hey, I'm here in your life. I know you believe in me, and I sent this guy to you. Mm. And I believed it, and it turned out to be true.
So the openness to those divine moments.
Yes.
So the idea is,
you, my dear friend.
No, so the symbol, there's this beautiful symbol of this in the tradition, which is that the burning bush sat there on the corner of Fifth Avenue and
Kushner's Midrash.
No, even better. I mean, the burning bush sat there on the corner of 42nd and Fifth Avenue forever. And millions of people walked by it and no one stopped to look at it. Right? The burning bush had been there since the beginning of time.
I see.
The question is, there are burning bushes all over your life. The question is,
yeah.
Are you prepared to stop and watch and listen? And when the bush says, I have work for you, and I know it's not the direction you were planning on going. I mean, Moshe had a pretty good job. His father-in-law was the chief priest of Midian. He had the flocks to take care of. And I got news for you. You know this as a rabbi. If you're given a choice between leading Jews and leading sheep, take the sheep. Take the sheep. Yeah, because they do what you tell them to do.
They right? Don't fetch. There's no
but here, destiny calls to you at this moment. So what you're saying is that this theory is that there are moments of destiny that turn you in the right direction. And the question is, do you have the openness and sensitivity? And what the story is trying to ask you is, do you have the openness and sensitivity to those moments where God calls you, where greatness is calling you, as it were?
Exactly. So now, my friend, I have to ask you, tell me, has there been anything in your life where you feel God has been nudging you? God nudged you down a certain path, and you were conscious of that.
So I don't know. I'm not sure I call it God, but yeah, life called me down a certain path. Life called me down a certain. Life called me there. God called me down a certain path and said, "Come and do this." I went to college. I could have been a lawyer. Everyone thought I was. Everyone thought I was, because every really, really bright kid who wasn't a scientist in school and didn't go to medical school went to law school in my world. So this idea of going and devoting a life to the Jewish people as a rabbi, to Torah, was a little wacko.
So what was the moment?
There wasn't a particular moment. It was just a series of choices along the way. And also to discover people. I would put it slightly different. I love the image of the guy at Dotan, the guy at Shechem, because for me it was people. It's a person who you meet, and you have the presence to stop and listen to that person, and to affiliate with that person, and to gain that person, to find a friend, to find a teacher. I've been given amazing teachers in my life.
And you know what the guy in the field said to him? The question he asked Joseph. What are
you looking for in life? Right.
Exactly.
What are you looking for in life? And I found teachers who pushed me in the right direction, who reassured me that I could do it. Who, when I told them I'm not this, I can't. No. They said, you're it. And at moments of real, at moments of despair and at moments of surrender, when someone shows up in your life and says, no, this is a beginning, not an end. And you have it. You have the capacity to do what you need to do.
Right.
Those have been very powerful moments, very powerful moments.
You remember, have you ever, I wrote letters to my angels. I tell people to do that, so I do it.
Mm.
I wrote letters to the ones who are still alive. Some, like Nelson Glick, are dead, and David Shapiro's dead. But those who are still alive, I wrote letters to them, and I thanked them for directing my life in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's important that you frame these moments, I think, as not just, this guy had an influence on me, no, that there's some, and the problem people have with this is it's too arrogant, and I accept that. It's arrogant to say God of the universe, gives two shoots about what Gellman's going to do. That's arrogant. On the other hand, maybe it's a kind of a love that's so powerful that it transcends anything we know, and that it does encompass us the way gravity encompasses all of us. That somehow, some way, we're involved in a world in which people's gifts are paired up with challenges that are perfect for those gifts. Mm-hmm. And I think people have said to you, and I've said to you, that it's obvious. I think you're the greatest rabbi in America, and I've always thought that. And
then we're in big trouble.
No. And it's because your abilities and your responsibilities perfectly mesh.
No, you know what I think is, I want to just say something what you just said. Thank you for the compliment. That was beautiful. But, this is what you get from hanging out with your friend Tom Hartman, right? What? We Jews in our tradition, in Torah, in the prayer book, have a very strong tradition of divine love, what the Christians call grace.
Yeah.
But we don't pay attention to it. We're Correct. More interested in God as a commander. We're more interested in God in issues of revelation, judge, right? The Christians picked up on ahava rabbah or ahavat olam, these phrases from our own prayer book, and they built a whole faith out of that. And we gave it to them. And you, because you hang out with them, you brought it back. So yes, this idea that, that there are moments when that there is a God who actually loves you. And it's not because you deserved it. It's not because you're such any one of us is a righteous or a good or sin-free person. This is grace. This is a parental love. My mama loved me even when I did bad stuff. It's a parental love that looks out for souls who are just beloved to that parent, beloved to that divinity, and to experience life through that lens, to experience a moment in life and say, that's a moment of divine love. I can feel God's love at that moment. That is such a beautiful thing. And it's a completely Jewish idea that we gave away and we haven't brought it back. And you just expressed it so nicely.
Oh, thanks.
No,
and
really.
They call it agape in Greek, and we call it chesed, and it's chesed, the love you didn't earn. You didn't earn, but God anyway.
And we talk about Shekhinah as a feminine, as the mother, as the mothering part of God, and there's a whole language that we have, but we haven't used it. We've given it away.
I know,
and it's time to bring it back.
Christian. It sounds so Christian.
Right, but it's ours. We owned it.
Yes, I want it back. They took it and I want it back.
We can have it back. All right, Marc. So it's tonight's New Year's. It's New Year's 2023. There is a beautiful American custom, as you know, of making resolutions. For New Year's. According to my friends in the business, everybody goes and joins a gym this next week because everyone wants to lose 20 pounds and look better by the summertime. So talk to me about this tradition. Talk to me about making New Year's resolutions. Do you make New Year's resolutions? Do we recommend that as a mitzvah? Going into a new year?
it's like I don't believe in Hanukkah, but I believe in gift giving. So there's certain elements that I pick and choose, and one of them is making resolutions. I believe in that, even though some of them are short-lived, and some might be even insincere. But I believe that any act of self-reflection, any act of examining your life and saying, okay, I'm not perfect, and here's the ways I'm falling short. Maybe I could do something to address that. And that's the first thing. So that's what's good about resolutions. The second is they can lead you to the way that you can actually make progress in your life. So this morning I worked out with a physical therapist in the gym, and I said, you know, I'm so weak because I've been ill and I'm so deconditioned. And he said, yes, you are. But today you are stronger after we worked together than you were when you came in. You're a little stronger. And what else do you want from today? What else do you want from today? He didn't say that. I said that to myself on my way out. I said, you're stronger today than you were yesterday. And so that was the result of a resolution that after being sick for a while, I gotta get better and I gotta take care of myself. And even though I'm starting at a low level, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so I believe in resolutions that way, because you begin to do something. Just do something, do anything. So I believe in that. I also believe in holidays that bring us together. And the two that I know of that bring us together really are Thanksgiving. We all are brought together on that as a national holiday, and New Year's. Halloween and Valentine's Day are trivial, but New Year's Day is everything's closed. You're together with family and friends. You watch football, and you have a party and you drink, and you blow little gruggers and you sing Auld Lang Syne, whatever that means. I don't know what an Auld Lang Syne means, but it's just a beautiful moment that brings us together. And how could you say about beautiful moments that bring us together that there's anything bad with that? I don't know.
That's nice. I think, we believe in beginnings, and the power of beginnings is something very serious. I mean, the Jewish tradition has, according to the Mishnahs, there's 4 Rosh Hashanahs. And then when you add Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of each month, and then you add January 1st, you end up with a whole lot of we're a big beginning people. The first word in the Bible is the beginning. We're a beginning people because it means we never get stuck. We're a beginning people because the idea that you could add something new to the world is one of Judaism's great gifts to human consciousness, that the world isn't in a cycle that's endless, a loop, but rather you're able to add something new. The Hasidic tradition called God HaMichadesh, the power of renewing, of making the new, of the novel. So I think that celebrating the first of the year as a yontif, as a holiday, is a perfectly wonderful idea. Yeah. Don't get too drunk. God forbid, don't drive, right? But enjoy the people that matter to you, and have a celebration, and make a promise that this next year we'll try to do a little better than we did last year. Thanks for listening. Shabbat Shalom. Happy New Year to everyone. Marc, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Happy New Year, my friend.
Good health and strength. Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and happy 2023.
Shabbat